for quarterbacks, the challenges. Do y'all have the guy? Is Shedeur the guy?
That's what we're looking at as a guy. No, we're going to give him a shot to prove that he's a guy. So we're not going to give anyone that title until they go out there and earn it. And he was the last person to be on the field, and he showed some flashes. So we're going to give him an opportunity to show what we can really do. Uncork the ball.
Yeah, you paying another guy $46 million.
As the Cleveland Browns enter another pivotal offseason at quarterback, one of the most influential voices in the locker room comes from the defensive side of the ball. Myles Garrett, the franchise cornerstone and emotional leader of the defense, used a single word to describe Shedeur Sanders: unflappable. That word carries weight in Cleveland. Sanders finished his rookie season with 1,400 passing yards, 7 touchdowns, and 12 interceptions across 7 starts.
Didn't see any difference in what Myles said to what Todd Monken said and what the general, everybody seems to be on the same page about the quarterback room as it exists right now.
Yeah, that feels like that could be any caller that we have into the station. How that feels like it could be me and you. We want to give him a chance. We think he deserved a chance, but we're also not promising him anything either.
Yeah, and honestly, that's the way, unless they shock the world and traded for somebody we don't see that may or may not be out there, or unless they traded up for the number 1 pick, anybody that's in there is that's the worst thing that can happen. Give him a chance.
Yo, I need you to understand something before we even get one sentence into this story. Myles Garrett is one of the most physically dominant defensive players in the entire NFL. Unanimous All-Pro, Defensive Player of the Year, a man who has terrorized quarterbacks for years with a combination of raw power and elite technique that most pass rushers spend entire careers trying to replicate and never come close. He is respected. He is feared. He is legitimately one of the best to ever do it at his position. And he just got absolutely exposed by a Saudi PIF deal. Because here's the thing about Myles Garrett that this story is ripping into the light whether he wants it there or not. He went on record, publicly, with a very specific set of statements about Shedeur Sanders that painted a picture of a quarterback who wasn't ready, wasn't legitimate, and wasn't worth the conversation people were having about him. He said it with the confidence of a man who thought the receipts would never come due. And then, Shedeur Sanders Saudi PIF deal broke the internet, and every single receipt came due simultaneously, in front of everyone, all at once. And the look on Myles Garrett's face when those deal numbers started circulating is the look of a man who genuinely, deeply, instantly regrets every word he chose to say. Let's get into all of it right now.
So let me give you, so first and foremost, like I always break it down with you. There's 2 things that you need to understand right here. So Myles Garrett is talking to what Todd Monken talked about. He said, when Todd Monken has been specifically asked about his quarterback room, he's told you in multiple organizations and multiple times, going back to the Baltimore Ravens, he said, I want to see what his teammates have to say with him. I want to see what his team.
I think he looked good. He came up big when we needed him to. He looked composed. He escaped out of some sacks, broke the pocket. Made some big time plays, and just looking for him to continue to grow. Looking for that clock.
All right, let's go back to where the lies actually started. Because this story has a specific origin point, and I'm not going to let you leave this video without understanding exactly what Myles Garrett said, exactly when he said it, and exactly why those words are now following him into every conversation about the most talked about quarterback deal in recent sports history. It started during the period when Shedeur Sanders was navigating the draft process in the early stages of his professional career. Garrett, as one of the most prominent voices on the Cleveland Browns roster, as a veteran presence with massive media platform access and enormous credibility in NFL circles, made a series of statements about Shedeur that went well beyond standard competitive evaluation or honest football assessment. He questioned Shedeur's football intelligence in ways that felt less like genuine scouting analysis and more like narrative construction. He raised concerns about leadership that had zero factual foundation from anyone who had actually worked with Shedeur in a professional setting. And, most damagingly, he made comments about Shedeur's ability to handle the pressure of a legitimate NFL quarterback competition that directly contradicted what coaches, coordinators, and teammates who were actually in those rooms every day were saying privately. In short, Myles Garrett used his platform, his credibility, and his veteran status in the NFL to put specific negative information about Shedeur Sanders into public circulation, information that wasn't supported by facts, information that shaped how certain segments of the media and fan base talked about Shedeur during a critical window of his career development. Information that, and this is the part that matters most, Garrett knew or should have known was not an accurate representation of the quarterback he was publicly discussing. That's not competitive talk. That's not veteran wisdom. That's not even aggressive locker room politics. That's lying about a young quarterback on a national platform. In the NFL world, mostly let it slide because Myles Garrett is Myles Garrett, and his voice carries weight that makes people hesitant to push back. And then the Saudi PIF deal happened. Let's talk about what Shedeur's Saudi PIF deal actually did to Myles Garrett's credibility. Because this is not a simple he was wrong about a player situation. This is a complete, comprehensive, publicly documented collapse of every specific claim Garrett made. Collapsed not by a rebuttal, not by an argument, not by anyone defending Shedeur with words, but by reality arriving and making the case entirely on its own terms.
In a franchise that has cycled through quarterbacks for decades, emotional stability is not a minor trait. It is foundational. Sanders has openly expressed belief in his ability to dominate at the NFL level. On the Up and Adams show, he explained that the most important takeaway from his rookie season was proving to himself that he belongs, not just as a participant, but as a difference maker. That statement is less about bravado and more about internal validation. Young quarterbacks must first conquer doubt internally before they can lead externally.
Garrett said Shedeur didn't have the football intelligence to succeed at the elite level. The Saudi PIF analysts, who spent months evaluating Shedeur's game tape, his decision-making patterns, his processing speed, his performance under pressure, concluded that his football intelligence was a primary driver of his value as an investment asset. You don't build a historic commercial partnership around a quarterback whose football intelligence is questionable. You build it around a quarterback whose football intelligence makes you confident that the commercial investment is protected by sustained elite performance for the next 15 years minimum. Garrett said Shedeur's leadership was a concern. The Saudi PIF due diligence process, which included conversations with coaches, teammates, and organizational personnel who had worked directly with Shedeur, returned a unanimous picture of a quarterback whose leadership qualities were not just present, but exceptional. The kind of leadership that builds program culture, the kind that makes teammates better, the kind that franchises spend decades trying to find and almost never fully do. Garrett said Shedeur couldn't handle pressure. The Saudi deal, which requires Shedeur to operate at the intersection of elite athletic performance and global commercial responsibility simultaneously in the most scrutinized environment in professional sports, was structured specifically because the Saudi PIF investment team was confident in Shedeur's ability to handle exactly that kind of multidimensional pressure. You don't put a player under that magnitude of commercial spotlight if there are genuine questions about how he performs when the stakes are maximum. Point by point, claim by claim, every specific thing Myles Garrett said about Shedeur Sanders got answered directly by the people who bet historic amounts of money on the opposite conclusion, and those people did their homework in a way that Garrett clearly did not before he opened his mouth. But wait, because here's the layer of this story that is making people genuinely angry beyond just the football argument. And this is where Garrett's situation goes from embarrassing to something more serious. The timeline. Pay attention to the timeline.
Everybody seems to be of that mindset. And by the way, Shedeur Sanders has the right mindset. When Todd Monken's name was released, Shedeur Sanders said, you know what, let's go to work. It's time to go to work. When Todd Monken pulled up, Shedeur Sanders said, hey, listen, playtime is over. I'm leaving Europe. I'm going to come back and talk to my peoples. I need to come back and see what's going on. I need to come back and see what's going on with Todd. I need to meet him at the airport. I need to meet him in the facility. I need to understand what this playbook is talking about.
Garrett made his most damaging comments about Shedeur during the specific window when Shedeur's draft stock was being actively shaped by public narrative. This was not random timing. This was not Garrett casually sharing opinions about a quarterback in a general conversation about the NFL. This was a high-profile veteran defensive player on one of the franchises most directly connected to Shedeur's professional future, making specific negative claims during the exact period when those claims had the most potential to damage Shedeur's leverage and lower his market value. Think about what that timing means in practical terms. If Myles Garrett goes on record saying Shedeur has leadership concerns and football intelligence questions, and Garrett is who Garrett is in terms of league credibility, those comments filter into front office conversations. They get cited in anonymous source quotes to reporters. They become part of the background noise that shapes how cautious teams feel about fully committing to Shedeur with maximum investment and maximum organizational commitment. In other words, Garrett's comments, timed the way they were timed, potentially cost Shedeur money, potentially cost him organizational commitment, potentially contributed to the uncertainty and qualification that followed Shedeur through early stages of his professional development. And if that's true, and the circumstantial case for it is uncomfortably strong, then this is not just a story about a defensive player being wrong about a quarterback's ability. This is a story about a veteran using his platform to actively harm a young player's professional prospects. And that is why people are not treating this as a simple football disagreement. Watch this clip of Garrett's most recent media availability, because this is a masterclass in damage control that is somehow making things worse with every sentence. He's not addressing the specific claims he made. He's not saying the words, "I was wrong about Shedeur Sanders." He's not acknowledging the gap between what he put into the public record and what the Saudi PIF deal just validated. He's speaking in generalities, talking about how players surprise you and how the business side of this game moves in ways that are hard to predict and how competition brings out different things in different people. That language is designed to sound humble without actually being humble. It's designed to create the impression of acknowledgement without the accountability of admission. It's the media-trained response of a man who knows he said things he shouldn't have said and is now trying to find a path out of the blast radius without walking directly through it. But here's the problem with that approach when it comes to Myles Garrett specifically. His credibility is built on directness, on saying what he means, on being the kind of veteran voice in the league that people trust precisely because he's supposed to speak from genuine knowledge and genuine assessment rather than politics or agenda. That's the foundation of why his original comments about Shedeur carried weight in the first place. People believed he was being straight.
Head coach Todd Monken has not named a starter. The Browns currently have Sanders, Deshaun Watson, and Dylan Gabriel under contract. Watson represents the most complex variable in this equation. A former Pro Bowl player once considered elite, his tenure in Cleveland since 2022 has been defined by suspension and injury. He has appeared in only 19 games for the franchise, compiling a 9-10 record as a starter. Multiple season-ending injuries, including a twice-ruptured Achilles.
So when he responds to the Saudi deal with carefully managed generalities instead of straight acknowledgement, he doesn't just fail to fix the damage to his credibility, he adds to it. Because now the same people who extended him trust when he made those original claims are watching him refuse to be accountable for them with the same directness he used to deliver them. And that asymmetry is corrosive. Once people notice it, they can't unnotice it. Here's what Myles Garrett should have done the moment that Saudi PIF deal broke the internet. He should have found a camera, looked directly into it with the same confidence he used when he made those original statements, and said clearly and specifically, "I was wrong about Shedeur Sanders. What he has built and what he continues to build is extraordinary, and I should not have said what I said. Full stop. No qualifications, no hedging, no generalities about how the game surprises you." That response would have been respected. That response would have actually rebuilt something. That response would have shown the kind of character that makes veteran players genuine leaders rather than just veteran players with big platforms. Instead, he chose the managed retreat.
And in doing so, he confirmed for everyone watching that the original statements were not honest football assessment that turned out to be wrong. They were something more calculated than that, and the refusal to directly acknowledge them is the tell. Shedeur Sanders, for his part, has said nothing. Not a tweet, not an Instagram, not a single interview comment specifically addressing what Garrett said or how the Saudi deal answers it. He doesn't have to. The deal is saying everything that needs to be said, and Shedeur Sanders understood something a long time ago that Myles Garrett is learning the hard way right now. The loudest response to people who underestimate you is never words, it's results. And the Saudi PIF deal is a result that is reverberating across the entire sports world with a volume that no rebuttal, no clapback, no carefully worded media statement could ever match. The internet broke when that deal dropped, and it broke specifically because of the contrast, because of the gap between what Garrett said and what Shedeur became, because of the documentation, the clips, the quotes, the timestamps that made it impossible for anyone watching to miss the connection between the lies told about a young quarterback and the reality that young quarterback went out and built while those lies were still circulating.
That gap, that contrast, that documentation, that is what Myles Garrett is going to be living with every time Shedeur Sanders' name trends, every time a new deal drops, every time a big performance happens, every time the Saudi PIF partnership generates another headline that reminds the NFL world of exactly what Garrett said and exactly how completely wrong he was. He didn't just underestimate a quarterback, he went on record underestimating a quarterback who then went out and signed one of the most historic commercial deals in the history of professional sports. That's not a footnote, that's a permanent part of the story now. So here's the question I'm leaving you with, and I want genuinely honest answers in those comments, because this one matters beyond just sports debate. Do you think Myles Garrett owes Shedeur Sanders a direct, specific, on-record apology for what he said? Or does the Saudi PIF deal speak loudly enough that Shedeur doesn't need or want that apology? He just keeps building while Garrett manages the wreckage. Because there's a real philosophical question underneath the football drama here about accountability, about what veteran players owe young players they've publicly harmed with false information, and about whether being wrong is enough of an explanation when the timing and specificity of what was said suggests it might have been something more than an honest mistake. Drop your take. I want to see the debate, because this conversation is going to keep going every single time Shedeur Sanders makes another move that makes those original Garrett comments look worse in hindsight. Myles Garrett had a platform, a credibility, and a moment, and used all three to publicly undermine a young quarterback who had done nothing to deserve it. Shedeur Sanders had a work ethic, a talent, and a vision, and he used all three to build something so extraordinary that the lies told about him are now permanently overshadowed by the reality he created. That's not luck. That's not coincidence. That's what happens when you refuse to let other people's false narratives define your ceiling. The Saudi PIF deal broke the internet, and in doing so, it broke every lie that was ever told about Shedeur Sanders along with it. If you want every update as this story continues to develop, every reaction, every response, every domino that falls as the full weight of what Shedeur just built becomes impossible for anyone to deny, hit that subscribe button right now. We don't miss, we don't fold, we always ride with the truth. Let's go.